Hello all, welcome to the course on Python programming for beginners. We are in module 11, Object-Oriented Programming, lecture 4. In this lecture, we are going to discuss about the data encapsulation, which is one of the key features of the object-oriented programming. In the previous classes, we have seen how to define a class, and we also have seen that class is a blueprint with which we can create any number of objects that belong to the particular class. And a class consists of variables as well as methods. That means we are binding the variables and methods into the class. So this wrapping up of data and methods into one single unit, which is called as a class, this process is termed as encapsulation. So basically, encapsulation is a mechanism wherein we wrap up the data and methods in the form of a single class, which is a blueprint for creating the objects. So with this mechanism, we are restricting the access of the variables and methods outside the class. And Python implements data encapsulation by using the access modifiers. So let us see how to do that. Encapsulation is one of the fundamental principles of object-oriented programming. It refers to the concept of bundling the data, which is nothing but the attributes and methods or functions that operate on that data into a single unit, which is called as a class. With this encapsulation, we are hiding the internal implementation details of the class from the outside world. So simply, we will be able to access the functions of the class by using the object names without actually knowing how they are being implemented inside. In Python, encapsulation is achieved through the use of access modifiers, which are not as strict as Java or C++. First, let us see what are the access modifiers that are used in Python to implement encapsulation. Python provides three types of access specifiers, which are public, protected, and private. And by default, all the members are public. Members that are accessible from anywhere, both inside and outside the class. That means public members can be accessed from inside the class or outside the class. By default, all the members are considered as public. So if you don't specify anything for the variables or the methods, they are considered as public. And the next category of access specifiers are protected. These members are having a single leading underscore to mention that they are the protected members. And protected members should not be accessed from outside the class. Whereas public members can be accessed from outside the class and within the class. Protected members, they are not supposed to be accessed from outside the class. And there is one more category of access specifier, which is called as private. And private members are represented by using a double underscore in the beginning of the name of the attribute. And this is a stronger convention as compared to the protected members. For protected members, we have only one single underscore at the beginning of the attribute or method. Similarly, private members are indicated with a double underscore at the beginning. So as compared to protected, private data members are even more restrictive. That means one should not be accessing the private data members from outside the class. Now let us see an example of public and private data members. We have public and private data members as well as public and private methods also. First, let us see the data members, which are either public or private. Public variables are those variables that are defined in the class and can be accessed from anywhere in the program using the dot operator. That means public members can be accessed from anywhere, be it within the class or outside the class. On the other hand, private data members are those variables that are defined in the class with a double underscore prefix. These variables can be accessed only from within the class and from nowhere outside the class. Let us see an example program to demonstrate the use of public as well as private data members. Here we are defining a class called as student. We are writing a constructor by using double underscore init double underscore. And this constructor is taking two parameters. One is roll number and the other one is grade. The first parameter is self, which represents the current object. Self dot roll number equal to roll number and self dot double underscore grade equal to grade. Here, if you observe these two attributes, roll number is a public variable because we are not mentioning any single underscore or double underscore in the beginning of the attribute. On the other hand, grade is a private data member which is indicated by writing a double underscore at the beginning of the attribute name. And we are writing a method display which displays both the roll number as well as the grade. So roll number is a public data member and double underscore grade is a private data member. We are creating an object obj1 by using the name of the class and by passing the parameters which are roll number and grade. Grade is S and roll number is 1. So obj1 dot display. So it is going to invoke the method display, which is the method of the class. So the values of the roll number and grade will be printed. Though we are accessing the method of the class display, we are not directly accessing the private data member here. That is why we are able to print both the roll number as well as grade, because here it is not the statement that is outside the class that is accessing the private data member. It is the method of the class that is accessing the private data member. So we are allowed to access the private data member from within the class. Since the method is defined within the class, we can access the private data member. Now let us look at the other two statements. Print obj1 dot roll number. That means we are trying to access roll number from outside the class, which is allowed because roll number is a public data member. On the other hand, if we try to print obj1 dot double underscore grade, which is a private data member, and this private data member we are not supposed to access from outside the class. So if we try to do so, it gives an error stating that attribute error, student object has no attribute double underscore grade. That means it is a private data member or private attribute which is not visible to the outside world. That means outside the class, it is not visible. Like how we have public and private data members, we also have public and private methods also. Public methods are accessible from both inside and outside the class, like public data members. And private methods are meant for internal use within the class and are typically discouraged for external use. So there is no strict restriction on accessing the private data members in Python. It is just to indicate that double underscore represents private data members and they are not supposed to be used from outside the class. On the other hand, there is no restriction. That means it won't give any error even if we try to access the private data members by using a concept called as data mangling that we'll see later on in the next example, data mangling or name mangling. It is called as name mangling. So using that name mangling, we are allowed to access the private data members as well as protected data members also from outside the class. So though it is allowed, one should not try to access the protected data members and private data members from outside the class. Private methods are indicated by a double leading underscore similar to private data members. Now let us see an example to demonstrate public and private methods. So let's see this example. Here we are defining a class person and a constructor with two attributes or two arguments, name and age, which are used for initializing the attributes name and age of the current object. Self.name equal to name and self.age equal to age. Now we are defining a method which is called as isAdult. So here this isAdult is a public method because we have not given any double underscore or single underscore at the beginning of the name of the method. That is why by default it is the public method. So define isAdult and there are no parameters here, simply the parameter self, which is the mandatory argument. So return self.age greater than or equal to 18. That means this return statement is going to return true if the value of age of the current object is greater than or equal to 18. Otherwise, it returns false. We are also defining another method, double underscore private method, which represents that it is a private method and which is not supposed to be accessed from outside the class. And in this method, we are simply writing a print statement in private method. Now, once the class definition is over, we are defining an object P1, which is equal to person with name Elise and age as 25. Now, we are invoking the method P1.isAdult, which is a public method, and we are printing the result of the returned value of isAdult. So isAdult returns a Boolean value. Whenever this age is greater than 18, it returns true, otherwise it returns false. Since in this case, the age is 25, so it returns true. And then we are writing another statement, which is P1 dot double underscore private method. So let me show you that by removing the comment. So when we try to invoke the private method using the name of the object, that means we are trying to invoke the private method from outside the class. So in such a case, let us execute and see. It returns an error, which is called as the attribute error, stating that person object has no attribute double underscore private method. Because here there is an attempt to invoke the private method from outside the class. That is why it is throwing an error. Now, the same thing, that means we can access the private method by using a concept called as name mangling, wherein the private method is preceded with single underscore followed by class name. In such a case, it refers to the private method definition that is included in the class. Though it is a private method, we are able to access this. Let us execute and see. Now, there won't be any error because we are using name mangling. That means we are trying to access the private method from outside the class by preceding with single underscore followed by the name of the class. So this is the syntax that we have to follow whenever we have to access the private members or protected members from outside the class. So this provision is, though it is the provision is made to access the private data members from outside the class, it is not desirable. That means we have to discourage writing such code. Now, moving on to the next one. So this is the demonstration that we have seen previously. The program is written here and it is going to display true and in private method. Here we are using name mangling for accessing the private method of the class. Now let us see the protected data members. We can also have protected methods also, whose accessibility lies in between that of the public data members and private data members. So protected members of a class are accessible from within the class and they are also available to its child classes. So the meaning of child class can be understood once you watch the video on inheritance. So these protected members are having the accessibility to the child classes also. So these are especially useful whenever we are using inheritance. That means we are trying to derive a class from a base class. So only in such cases, protected data members are inherited to the child class. And no other environment is permitted to access the protected data members. So like private data members, protected data members are also not accessible from outside the class, but they can be inherited to the child class. This enables specific resources of the parent class to be inherited by the child class. So in order to represent the protected data members, we have to proceed with the single underscore. Double underscore indicates that they are private data members or private methods. On the other hand, single underscore represents that they are the protected members. So let us look at this example where we are defining a class student and single underscore school name. This is a protected class variable. This is a protected class variable. Why it is called as class variable? Because we are defining outside the constructor definition and outside the methods of the class, but within the name of the class, within the class definition. That is why it is called as a protected class variable. Since it is preceded with single underscore, it is a protected variable. Since we are defining it within the definition of the class and outside the constructor, it is the class variable. Now, we are writing a constructor double underscore init double underscore. It takes 3 parameters, self followed by 2 other parameters to initialize the attributes of the object. Now self dot single underscore name equal to name. That means here the single underscore name is a protected instance variable. And self dot underscore age equal to age. Here, since we are preceding the attribute name with single underscore, it is a protected instance variable. So likewise, we can represent the protected data members, either the protected class variable or protected instance variables by preceding them with the single underscore. So the restriction is they cannot be accessed from outside the class, but they can be accessed from within the class. So in this lecture, we have seen the encapsulation concept. Encapsulation in Python is an object-oriented principle where data and methods are encapsulated within the class to hide the internal details or the internal implementation details of the functions. And for implementing encapsulation in Python, access modifiers are used, which include the public, protected, and private. So by default, all the members are public in nature. So if we proceed with one single leading underscore, they are protected members. And if we proceed with double leading underscore, they represent private members. Encapsulation ensures data protection, access control, and code modularity. And Python uses only naming conventions in order to indicate the access levels, be it private or protected. Though we can access the protected members and private data members from outside the class, it is always a best practice to use public methods and limit the direct access to the private data members and protected members from outside the class or external code. So with this, we came to the end of this lecture, and let us continue with the other concepts of the object-oriented programming in the next lecture. Thank you.